Hi, everybody, and welcome to Roll for Insight. Spider-Man No Way Home,
Oh yeah.
The big one.
the big one. Um, no non-spoilers first, then we'll go into spoilers. There'll be chapters down below. What do you guys think? In a
Oh, that was
word,
really
just,
good.
just just give a word summary of it. A single word first of all. Actually, let's start with that. One word to describe your experience.
Spectacular.
I like that. Tommy?
Keeping with the theme, amazing.
See, I was going to go with phenomenal, but now I feel like I've let the team down by not going with the
Yeah,
theme. Yeah,
Say astonishing.
astonishing. Um,
wow.
ultimate.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I could get behind that.
Let's talk a little bit more about just doing adjectives. Is it an adjective? Would it be?
Yeah,
Yeah, it'd
I'd
be an
say so.
adjective.
It's a describing word.
Yeah. Let's go a little bit deeper. What do people think?
Thought you were. It looked like you were pointing at me then.
No, I noticed I was slightly soft focused, so I just.
Um, I don't even know where to start, but I did not expect them. Wait, are we in spoiler
Non-spoilers. No,
territory?
we're non-spoilers,
Non-spoilers.
so just
How can we talk about this without
easily.
spoilers?
There's
I can't.
like
I just can't.
2.5 hours of movie to talk about without Okay, so I'll start with something then.
Yeah.
I've had some reservations about the MCU Spider-Man. I like Tom Holland's interpretation of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. I like how he plays that character, but I've had some reservations about the characterization of him within the world. And I don't know if I've actually talked about this on the podcast. I think I have.
I think you have. I think in
It
our
might be in the first
Spider-Man
episode.
episode. Yeah.
Yeah. That one of my biggest issues with MCU Spider-Man is that he doesn't feel like he has any responsibility, ironically, being the big Spider-Man thing. And without saying exactly how that happens, I think this film rectified pretty much every issue I have with MCU Spider-Man, while also being the best looking of the MCU Spider-Man films, and probably one of the best visually looking MCU films. I mean, up there with things like Thor Ragnarok, I'd say, and also just fantastic choreography. I was thinking just before we started this that one of the things that is really astonishing to me, a Spider-Man adjective there,
Nice.
unintentional, but is that there are so many fight scenes in this film, and there's actually if you think about it, there's very few fight scenes in the previous MCU Spider-Man films. There's action sequences, but not many fight scenes. This film has a bunch, but they're all really, really well choreographed, and they're also really, really good set pieces. So if you think, and this is a weird parallel, but bear with me, if you think about a franchise like John Wick, most of the fight scenes in John Wick have both iconic choreography for that fight scene, but also great like set location, music, and all of that. So they're super memorable. Most, if not all, of the fight scenes in No Way Home are like that. They're in cool locations. They're using cool gadgets and powers. He's having to think as on his feet, and it just feels just really Spider-Man, but also just really just great action in that sense. So that's my spiel. I wanted to talk about non-spoileries, the fight scenes mainly.
Like it definitely. It was. I also had some reservations going into the movie because, it's not a spoiler at this point. It is a multiverse film.
Yeah, anything that's in the trailer, I think, is
Yeah.
fair game. So
Yeah, it is a multiverse film. I didn't like that. I didn't like the idea of that because we had Into the Spider-Verse, and I would rather have had like the multiverse come into play in the MCU through a different character instead of Spider-Man again.
and I think we also talked about it. It felt very kind of like continuing this plot of taking friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and putting him in these crazy scenarios, which for Avengers is fine, but so far he's fought aliens in outer space, and then he was going to be doing the first major multiverse thing in the MCU. It did feel like he should be smaller scale sort of thing. Not that not I just call him Superman. What? Not that Spider-Man hasn't done that sort of shit in the comics, but it's rare, right? And also those are usually the weaker Spider-Man comics. I feel like.
Yeah.
So.
It's not
Yeah.
what he's known for at all. Yeah.
Like they have like a lot of the, Spider-Verse stuff, where he meets, like Spider-Man 2099. Again, exactly what Into and Across the Spider-Verse is doing. But yeah, I didn't really want to see that. And also I feel like they'd set up in Far From Home the perfect way of introducing some cool new villains, like, for example, Craven. I really fucking wanted to see Craven,
Mm.
and they've set up Vulture, Scorpion. They had the making of the Sinister Six in the MCU already, and it very much felt like that's what they were going for. At the end of Far From Home, him getting outed as Spider-Man, whatever. Craven the Hunter could have hunted the spider. It seemed so perfect in my mind.
Mm.
And then, obviously the trailer came out and it's like, oh yeah, Doc Ock and Green Goblin and shit. And I'm like, I mean, that's cool. But I still would have preferred to see new villains
Mm.
in like this world they've already created rather than just kind of like rehashing old stuff that's already been done just for nostalgia purposes.
And I guess as well, one of the things, so yeah, the first trailer revealed Doc Ock and Green Goblin, hinted at other villains that I don't want to. If you've seen the trailer, you know who's been hinted at, but I don't want to kind of talk too much about the ones that weren't actively confirmed, just because we're not in spoiler territory yet. But those two were actively confirmed, and it kind of was like, oh, that's cool, but also, do you guys know what the phrase "jumping the shark" means?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can't
kind
remember
of.
where it's from, but it basically, for anyone who's watching who doesn't know, it means where like a franchise or story tries to go way too crazy with an idea, and it usually flops and fails miserably. And it kind of felt like they were doing that. It's like, oh, that's a cool concept, but can you pull it off? And I guess, on the one hand, Disney Marvel Cinematic Universe has pulled off Avengers 1, which was jumping the shark, arguably, and then Infinity War and Endgame, which was also arguably jumping the shark. But this one felt different in that way. But
Long story short, in my opinion, they did it.
yeah,
They
they did it.
succeeded in doing it. It was a great film. I have a few little gripes with it, but none that really take away my enjoyment from the film.
Mm.
I still would have preferred to see my, vision of what was to come, just because, well, for the reasons I've already laid out. But seeing as that is a film we have got, I am perfectly content with it. In
And
fact, I'm very happy with it.
there is room for much more Spider-Man stories to be told.
Yes.
So I did a little bit of research about the future of Spider-Man. We're not going to talk about how that might play in the MCU, but basically, we'll talk about it later, I guess, because it's probably easy to talk about post-spoilers, but there is probably more Spider-Man films coming at some point, is the long and short of it. I was wrong yesterday, Tommy, when I said that they were confirmed. It was Amy Pascal, who is the producer of them, saying that she wants to do another trilogy. So the producer wants to do another trilogy, but obviously that doesn't mean that there definitely will be another trilogy yet. But let's be real, this is probably going to be the biggest box office film of this year.
Oh yes, and and again, without spoiling anything, like just the way it left off, they'd be crazy not to make more.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later, just because we can go into more detail. I do think there is potentially one problem, but I don't think it's going to cause them to not do it. It just might delay it, basically. Also, again, avoiding spoiling anything, but one of my things as well was when Far From Home dropped and that ending, and you're like, okay, where can they take it from here? And then the first trailer, which is all I watched, I avoided everything else. I had kind of theories and expectations, and I'm not going to say that everything that I theorized or expected happened, but all of my hopes in terms of like what this film could be were achieved in terms of like I was fully satisfied. And this is coming after we talked previously in the podcast that people like Kevin Feige and John Watts were saying we don't know whether this film could possibly live up to the hype. It lives up to the hype. I hope that that's still going to be true if there's someone who has watched every single trailer and, you know, analyzed every single poster, watched the Japanese version of the trailers as an alternative shot or whatever. I hope that's still the case for them as well. But going in with virtually no knowledge of the film other than the trailer, just a beautiful experience. So,
Just on that point, I just want to quickly say, as someone who accidentally stumbled across an alternate version of the trailer because it got recommended to me on YouTube and Brazilian, exactly. And obviously, you know, I heard other things. It still lived up to the hype.
yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely did.
Also, my friend who constantly pesters me about everything MCU, but especially Spider-Man, she is a massive Spider-Man and Tom Holland fangirl, but it lived up to her hype, and she definitely watched all the trailers and analyzed all the posters, and she was asking me to do it, and I said, I'm not going to look at any of that, sorry, and she was calling me a bastard, so, yeah. Tommy, have you thought of anything non-spoilery you can say, or are you just going to float your head?
I have.
Okay.
Me, the talking head from the Fortress of Solitude, has come up with my own worries. What?
Daddy? Do I look like you? Sorry, just referencing a dumb meme.
See, the thing I always dislikes a bit of a strong word, but my reservation with this trilogy of Spider-Man was I always thought it was too, like you say, jumping the shark every film. I've always known Spider-Man as a ground level friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, so it's a bit weird when you see him fighting aliens in space and having an army of drones.
I think Homecoming is mostly okay with that, other than the Iron Man Jr. stuff, but then that all serves as something.
Yeah. Like at the end of the day, the main plot is somebody's battling for the scraps of the Avengers.
Yeah,
so,
that's true. But
yeah. But then you've got things like the Iron Spider suit coming from that as well. So, but weirdly, even though that this is a multiverse film, it felt kind of grounded, which was nice.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, somehow.
What I will say again, without spoilers, is I was expecting this film to go way more bonkers with multiverse stuff than it did. I mean, I'll just say what I assumed it would be. I assumed it would be hopping around multiple multiverses, and it involves multiverse stuff, but it's not just like a tour of what if, basically, which would have been a bit ridiculous. Yeah. So
it's not just that, but I feel like it also would have taken away from Spider-Verse if it had have done that, because I imagine that's what that will be.
Sure, but I think that's what mine and Alex's concern was, is that they were like, hey, people really liked Into the Spider-Verse, let's just do that but live action. And it's like, or you could not. And they didn't do it. They did a similar story, but again, you know, Into the Spider-Verse is based on a concept that has been in the Spider-Man comics. Basically, I don't know enough about it to talk about it like an expert, but there is a character called Madam Web who like connects the different Spider-Men from the multiverse and occasionally brings them together. So like, although she didn't appear in Into the Spider-Verse, that was that's very much a thing that's in the comic books. And so I was about to call this Multiverse of Madness. No Way Home is a similar concept of a multiverse film featuring Spider-Man, but it's not the same concept from the comics, and it's also not the same concept from Into the Spider-Verse. It's just similar origin point, I guess.
Yeah.
So spoilers. There are spoilers for No Way Home. If you haven't watched No Way Home, first of all, what the fuck are you doing watching this video? Second of all, what the fuck are you doing on YouTube? Third of all, what are you doing on the internet? Just go watch the film. Yes, COVID's scary right now. Omicron's like flaring up. It sucks. I really hope, frankly, that if it does like massively flare up, Disney decides to also release this film on Disney Plus, because I'd love to see it again, but I kind of don't want to go to the cinema a second time. But like, yeah, if you feel comfortable going, absolutely go see this film in cinemas.
Are the rest of the Spider-Man films on Disney
No,
Plus?
they're all on Netflix though, but I feel like they might be able to make an exception for this one. At least in the UK, they're on Netflix. But yeah,
I want to
Um,
be able to watch this as much as I possibly can.
Actually, they might also be on Disney Plus. I don't know. I haven't looked for them, and I've never
I know
noticed them. But
Venom isn't.
well, that's a fully Sony film. But
I know that is, but
the MCU Spider-Man films are a Sony and Disney joint venture, which is produced by Sony, so they have distribution rights. But it is also a Disney film, so they could be on Disney Plus, but I don't think I've ever noticed them on there. But they're definitely on Netflix. So, anyways, yeah, spoilers. So, where to begin? I guess at the beginning.
where to begin? Well, I know probably the first thing that's in your mind, Pete.
Yeah, but let's walk our way through the movie in a somewhat chronological order, I guess. Yeah, you guys game with that, or do you just want to jump to your highlights?
I mean, I'd say the thing that is probably on your mind the most is pretty early on in the film anyway.
Yeah,
well,
we might as well just start
It's
with that.
one of the first parts of the film.
well, I'll just say one thing off the bat, actually, which is the very beginning of the film. One thing that kind of threw me off and I didn't love, but I end up liking by the end of the film, is the beginning of the film's way more jovial than I thought it would be. Like, the trailer sets it up to be his identity's been revealed and his life is destroyed, and it's more like, you know, when he's swinging through the city and he like lands on the bridge and Ned calls him, it's all kind of played as quite comedic still, and I was like, oh, please don't do the Marvel thing of just playing all the serious moments for jokes because you don't like tension. But I think what it was, because the film is not that for the whole film, is easing you in with familiar and then taking that turn as the film went on and got more and more serious, while still having comedic moments, but not what I think the second and third act of this film don't do is undercut the serious moments with jokes. They have jokes, but they don't undercut serious moments. They let the serious moments be serious. But the beginning, I was expecting it to be serious because that's what the trailer played it as, and it's very traditional Marvel of like, hey, his identity's been revealed. People are hunting him. Helicopters are like, filming him on this bridge, and MJ nearly falls to her death. And he's on a wacky phone call with Ned, sort of thing. But like, as I said, if that throws you off at the beginning of the film, it's fine. It sorts itself out like 10 minutes later. So that's my one gripe with the opening of the film.
Fair enough. I can't say I've ever had an issue with that, to be honest, because it is still a Spider-Man film at the end of the day. I'd kind of want it to open up a little bit jovial, even if it did have a dark theme. But that's a subjective opinion at the end of the day.
All opinions are subjective, buddy. Inherently.
Okay.
You can't have an objective opinion. Get
Alex,
on
come in
those.
with something, please.
I kind of want to talk about what Pete wants to talk about, honestly.
I want to talk about that
fucking
too.
Murdoch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My boy.
Of the really good lawyer.
Yep.
My beautiful baby boy. I
You were
no
just
longer
there.
have to break Tom Holland's
was.
legs. It's so nice. It's such a nice feeling.
It was. He was just there. Like that. It really took me by surprise.
Yeah.
Did
I
not
made the
expect
weirdest
Grace to-
noise when he was there. The cinema was silent, and the just left my mouth.
And
I slapped my face a couple of times. I was like, "What the fuck?"
I'm somewhat glad we weren't sat in an aisle seat, because I probably would have jumped out of my seat if we had been, because we were sat in Premiere, which is like right at the very back of Odeon. So like I wouldn't have been in the way of anyone if I had jumped up, and I might have done it, but we weren't in an aisle seat, so I couldn't. So instead I just went. Yeah, I was saying to Tommy after the film, I genuinely don't know what my favorite thing of the film is, because there's so many amazing moments and so much payoff for basically my entire childhood. Because like Spider-Man 1 came out in 2002, I want to say.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Maybe 2001, in which case me and Alex were 4 or 5 and you were 6, Tommy. So like...
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Basically, our entire childhood started with that Spider-Man film, the original Sam Raimi one, and has carried on to this point here. And there's so much payoff for that in the same way that like Logan is a grand hurrah for the X-Men movies and particularly the character of Wolverine, but also they brought my boy back, and I've been mourning my boy for 3 years, and he's my favorite character. So like I genuinely don't know what my favorite thing is, like, because yeah. Anyways,
I mean, the fact that Daredevil is back just gives me hope for what I've got down in my caption.
I hadn't even noticed your caption, but
That's
I
the
knew
only
that would be
reason.
your take. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, well, have you guys seen Hawkeye?
yes, yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna say some spoilers for Hawkeye right now. So if you've not seen Hawkeye, we'll put a chapter in so you can just quickly skip over this. But I'm not going to talk about it for long, just because I don't need to.
You know what? That's gonna ruin my chapter vibes on YouTube. Just we're talking about the latest MCU thing, but if you really want to skip the Hawkeye things, Alex will wave his hands manically when he's done talking about it. Just mute the video.
Sure,
Because
I can do that.
then you also look like a fool, and it's a great thumbnail moment. So
Okay, yeah, I'm cool with that. So yeah, I watched Spider-Man before I watched the latest episode of Hawkeye.
Okay.
So obviously I saw Daredevil come back, and I got a message from Tom saying, "Oh, have you seen Hawkeye?" And I was like, "No, I've not seen it yet." Didn't get around to watching it until the next day. And then obviously at the very end, it's like, "Oh, that's the man that I've been worried about this whole time, Kingpin." And I'm like, yes, it's going ahead. They're bringing Kingpin back. They're bringing Daredevil back. Now where's my Punisher?
It was we didn't see it on the same day Hawkeye came out. We saw it the next day. But still, fucking good day for Daredevil fans around the
very
world.
good.
Oh yeah.
Don't worry, Alex. They'll give you Iron Fist next.
No. No.
One thing as well though, and I'll probably mention this again on the podcast when we actually talk about Hawkeye in full, but you delivered it in a very different way to how Jeremy Renner delivered that line, because Jeremy Renner delivered the line as, "That's the man I've been worried about this whole time, Kingpin." And then the episode just ends. He just said it so like flatly and nonchalantly, and I'm like, okay, like it's
Kinda
cool.
like
It's really fucking cool, but I feel like you should have given a little bit more gusto to that Jeremy Renner.
I love how casually they announced both.
but like,
Murdock
but
and
like
Kingpin.
Daredevil's one worked dramatically, and I feel like Kingpin's one, it's supposed to be this big reveal, and he just says it's Kingpin.
I'd just like to add that I feel like I know we've said in one of the podcasts, you know, you never really think of Jeremy Renner as like a brilliant actor. Like, he's not one of the ones that you'd place up there. And I'd never really batted an eyelid at him before, you know, like he was there, you know, like he's Hawkeye. He's the only one I've ever known to play him, so that's kind of it for me. But in this most recent episode, I really got the feeling that he just does not give a shit, like, at all. I thought he was fucking terrible in this episode. I didn't think there was any emotion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, but let's save that for the podcast, because we're going to do a full talk on it.
Yeah,
but yeah,
just wanted to add it on.
Sure.
Right.
Welcome back. I'll probably also put a timestamp on. But I'm maybe I'll even do the chapters, but at least we've got Alex do the stupid wiggly hands thing.
That's what we wanted.
So it was literally what everyone predicted and theorized and hoped for, and I almost wonder whether it's a late edition, but even so, it doesn't matter. Like, he just is. He is Peter's lawyer, and maybe Happy's lawyer. He said that Happy needed a very good lawyer, and then he introduced himself as a very good lawyer. But and then he catches a brick, and that's my boy. He's like got a minute in the film, but it's what we needed.
A brilliant minute.
Yeah. So the film's less crazy than I thought it would be. He goes to the Sanctum Sanctorum, and he gets Strange to cast a spell, and it doesn't cause the multiverse to collapse, or it does, but much later on in the film. So when you were saying, Tommy, that it's a much more grounded film, I think what really works is that the entirety of the film, except for one sequence in the mirror dimension, is set in our version of New York. Well, the MCU's version of New York, the New York we're familiar with most of it being the Spider-Man that we're familiar with as well, and that just, I think, really helped the film. So
yeah. At the end of the day, the brunt of the movie is Spider-Man fighting Spider-Man villains in New York, and obviously there is magic involved, but that's more of a would you say MacGuffin?
yeah, I could see it being called a MacGuffin. It's definitely a plot device for sure.
Yeah.
And also Doctor Strange isn't in the film too much, which I like Doctor Strange as a character. I like Benedict Cumberbatch's portrayal, but one of the things I was worried about in the trailer is that we so far have had Homecoming, where Iron Man appears infrequently, but he has a substantial part in the plot of the film, supporting Peter. And then same thing with Far From Home with Mysterio, and I was like, I really want No Way Home for him to stand on his own, and arguably he doesn't stand on his own completely, but Doctor Strange is kind of in it in the first act and then comes back in the third act, and that's it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I guess he's also in the second act, but he's at the very beginning. Whatever. We don't need to break down when the act structure breaks are, but yeah. The film is really well paced as well. Like, I think the moment when he has to start collecting the different villains could have very easily turned into a slog, but it doesn't. They keep it very, very snappy, and that's good as well.
Yeah, actually, as we just said that, I just want to ask, how did Sandman and Spider-Man take down Electro? Like, because Sandman, like, Electro starts charging up, and then Sandman does his, like, vortex type thing, and Electro just kind of, like, just doesn't do anything. Like, Peter, like, pulls down the towers or whatever, but Electro's already charged up by then, so it's like, well, how, like, why did he just go down so easy? Like, he literally didn't even.
I think it was just when he was getting constant power, he was in full electricity form, so he wasn't physical matter. And when they cut him off from his supply, he's still charged up, but he's now physical matter again, so they can hit him with the web, I guess.
He still just didn't do anything though. Like, he didn't even struggle. It was just, it felt really weird to me. Like, all the other villains, I was like, okay, I mean, like, I mean, obviously there's a couple that you don't exactly see get, like, put in, but all the others, like, at least you have, like, a bit of the sort of build up, or, you know, a bit of, you know, even with, like, Norman or something, you at least believe that he is coming in willingly because he does want to change, or, you know, whatever.
I don't think he was tricking Peter for most of the film. I think that was real Norman Osborn, because he's always been a fucking schizo in the Sam Raimi films. I think the real Norman Osborn wanted to be cured and wanted Peter's help, and then at some point, Green Goblin came back and took over the psyche.
Okay, well, regardless, like, I feel like most of the villains, like, it felt fine, you know, how they got put in there. But Electro, I was just like, I just don't even know, like, what happened there.
I think Electro's probably the strangest villain in the film. He's not bad. I think Jamie Foxx does a good performance. I like the new design. I like how part of the reason why it's explained that he's different in this universe is because it's the arc reactor and the energy from that, which is obviously a new element that isn't in his like, that's a cool just little like Easter egg. But a friend of mine made the point, which is that last time we saw Electro in Amazing Spider-Man 2, he's a fucking really awkward nerd, and then he kind of feels like he's been betrayed by Spider-Man and wants to kill him, but he's still that awkward nerd. He's just now on a power trip. In this film, he doesn't feel like a nerd at all. You know, he's buff. He's not interested in the science they're doing or anything like that. He kind of just feels like Jamie Foxx playing a Jamie Foxx character, which is not a bad characterization, but it didn't feel like the same Electro from Amazing Spider-Man 2. At the same time, the Electro in Amazing Spider-Man 2 is fucking trash, and I think they just went, no one's going to care if we just make him a cooler character who's more likable. But it is noticeable if you try and think that they're supposed to be the same version. They aren't quite as like. I guess what it is essentially all of the other villains who appear in this film are basically bang on exactly as they were when we last saw them. And like it feels like the actors have not missed a step portraying these characters, and it just feels like really natural. And then Elektra is just cooler and more handsome and more confident in himself, and it's like okay.
I think with Electro, I don't think they really did like have a complete character shift, because even towards the end of the Amazing Spider-Man 2, he started to kind of become that. Like he wasn't like it was when he got freed by Harry.
Yeah, but he didn't.
That's when that started happening,
He
because
didn't feel like he showed any
basically turned into
confidence, though. He just felt like a
Oh no,
fucking
he
psycho.
did. No, like he definitely did, because he walked in and just crossed his arms as he was looking at like the guy that fucked him and Harry over, and then he just kind of like zapped him and like stopped his heart, and then just walked back over and like touched it and brought him back and shit. So he definitely started to display that confidence,
Fair
but
enough.
it wasn't like he didn't have like this sort of cool guy vibe that he does. But I think it was believable for me to imagine that's where the character could have gone anyway. So
Yeah, no, I think the Electro we see in this film makes sense. It's just the premise of the film is that they all get brought out the moment that we stop seeing them in the films, basically. And I don't think he was there at that point. If it had been that he got pulled into the MCU universe 6 months after Amazing Spider-Man 2, that would make sense. But he even says directly that he was fighting Peter and was about to kill Peter, and then suddenly,
yeah, no, that's fair.
I think that's when he gets hit by the car by Gwen, right? That's when he's out of the fight in Amazing Spider-Man 2. So he literally gets hit by Gwen by a fucking car, and then he's just in another universe.
Oh, I'd also like to say that when he was like, when you first see him and he starts powering up again, they played some of the like
Oh,
same type of music
yeah,
from the
yeah.
Amazing Spider-Man 2. That got me hyped,
Mhm.
because I think I said like I I didn't really care for like the whole nerdy electro type thing and the whole blue whatever. But the thing that I did really like about Electro in that film, which made the film for me, was like the whole sort of uh like like techno type like dubstep music that they played, and like all the like flashing lights and shit. And like I just thought that was like a really cool spectacle, and I thought it was unique, especially with like the way it was like it had chanting in it, like he was kind of like hyping himself up and everything. I really liked that about it, and I thought it was cool to at least pay homage to that in some respect.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really liked that.
I thought you were going to comment on how they incorporated the mask element from his costume, which is
Oh, I
let's
really like
face
that
it.
too.
There's a lot of characters in Marvel and in DC, obviously, but there's a lot of characters in comic books that have silly costumes that are some of them are pretty you can adapt to live action. Prime example is I think like at the end of the Wolverine, we see in like the post credit scene, we see the classic suit. I
Yeah,
genuinely think, obviously, like wouldn't fit with Logan, but I genuinely think if we had seen Hugh Jackman suit up in that costume for like Days of Future Past, it would have looked rad. I think they
yeah,
can pull off that sort of costume, but I think Electro's one is basic, and Vulture's another good example. It's basically a leotard with like a yellow like electronic like lightning bolt star over his. It looks goofy, and the way they incorporated that imagery without making it look goofy was really really cool. I thought.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I think like I didn't even particularly hate like Ultimate Electro. I think it's Ultimate Electro. Um, um, you know, Blue Electro, basically.
Oh right, okay. I was gonna Google
Because
who what Ultimate
yeah,
Electro looked like.
but yeah, I didn't really hate it just because I knew that that's what they were going for, and I knew that he had been like that in the comics. So I was like, okay, I can understand why they'd want to go for that rather than the stupid electric mask and leotard, Like, imagine sticking Jamie Foxx in that. I think that would look pretty fucking ridiculous,
Mm.
you know? So I could understand why they chose to do that version of it. much prefer this version though.
Yeah.
Like compared to that, it's so much better. Like as I said, didn't mind it when it first came out, but it does look a bit like, you know, just Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, to be fair, I didn't know he ever looked like that in the comics, and I just always went, okay, it's Dr. Manhattan rather than Electro. So
Yeah, but yeah, no. But yeah, definitely looks better in this film.
yeah. I mean, just in general, costume designs. I mean, Sandman's he's Sandman. He looks like an updated CGI version of what he looked like in Spider-Man 3, but he looked great in Spider-Man 3. He looks great in this. I did think that they probably kept him in sand form for pretty much the entirety of the film, because then they didn't have to bring the actor on for the entirety of the film. They could have like
That's
a
what I
performance
figured as
capture
well,
guy
yeah.
do most of it and then have him do voicing.
I was
Maybe I'm
kind
wrong.
of upset about that. I really wanted to
Mm.
see more of him. I really
Yeah.
liked him.
Yeah, and he's a really interesting villain. Having him interact a bit more with, I guess we're in spoiler territory anyway, so it's fine to say this. Having him interact with Toby's Spider-Man a bit more would have been cool, but they have a little bit of an interaction, but it would have been cool to have a little bit more. But we also get an updated look for Green Goblin. I love the updated look. I like the Sam Raimi Green Goblin suit, but it is very much a kind of early 2000s. We don't want to adapt the silliness from the comic book sort of costume. And the way they kind of incorporated elements from the comic, like the hood, I really like. Part of me kind of wishes that they had gone like when he gets injected with more of the venom, he turned into a green guy, but then at the same time, that might have looked a bit too wacky. So, like, I like what we got. That was a cool redesign.
I think I would have preferred it. Like I did like the design, but I would have preferred it if he just had like the half mask. You know, like just the bottom half of the cracked mask. I
That
think
could have
that
been
would look so
interesting.
sick.
It could have been
Yeah.
cool, yeah.
Yeah, I could see that.
And also, I just want to say, seeing as we were just talking about Sandman for a little bit, I personally don't like what they did with him, actually. Because at the end of, you know, Spider-Man 3, he had redeemed himself in at least Spider-Man's eyes and was just kind of like left to go and be on the run, I guess, you know, and he was very remorseful for what he did. You know, he'd made a mistake. He's made some mistakes in his life, and he's very much that type of character. And he came to terms with the fact that, you know, Spider-Man's forgiven him, and he knows that Peter's not a bad guy, and blah blah blah, and that, you know, he probably would end up helping him if, you know, if he sort of redeemed himself, you know, like whatever. He had good reasons basically for what he was doing. And then in this, he comes in and Spider-Man's like, yo, I'm gonna help you all out. I'm gonna help you get back to your universes and make sure you're all good and blah blah blah. And then Sandman just turns into a villain again, because why the fuck not, I guess.
I think they were very close to avoiding that for me. I don't hate what they did with it, because he sides with Peter immediately as soon as they meet up. He's like, I don't know who this electric dude is, but hey, Peter, do you need my help? Which is like showing that, you know, he's on Peter Parker's side because he recognizes the Spider-Man, so even though it's not his Spider-Man. And then he's probably the least anti Peter's ideas of like saving them all and sending them back to the universe. He just wants to get it over and done with so he can get back to his daughter. But then I think when everything hits, you know, when all the shit hits the fan and Green Goblin goes crazy, Sandman just kind of goes, I'm going to dip. And then I think he just kind of loses faith in Spider-Man's plan. It's just like, I'm going to get back to my universe on my own terms. And I'm, you know, I didn't feel like he was teaming up with the other villains. It felt to me like he was just on his own, trying to get back to his own universe by like hitting the box or whatever. But an extra scene or two just to explain that a little bit more clearly would have been nice.
I can't fully remember, but I think there was a reason why he lost trust in Spider-Man, like something that he did. Like I feel like it involved Electro, but it was at the beginning of the film, kind of, so I can't fully remember. But also, there's that scene where
it was him zapping them back to the Sanctum Sanctorum. That's a really hard word to say
yes,
quickly.
that was it. Yeah, and then they were locked up,
and he
which
was
is
like,
fair to lose
yeah.
a bit of trust.
And him being like, "This isn't my Spider-Man. I don't trust him," sort of thing. But
Yeah, but then there's that scene where he's bonding with Electro a little bit, where they have kind of a similar origin of sorts.
yeah,
So you
gotta
could
be careful where you fall.
Yeah, you do.
But yeah, no, I think, as I said, it's not a bad version of the character, and I think it was pretty good. But an extra scene or two might have just helped bring it without any issues whatsoever, sort of thing.
Like, I mean, I think a good example of kind of what I was expecting was Doc Ock. Like, I think they did his perfectly. Like, it was basically the same as Sandman, except actually good. Like, it came full circle, you know. Like Sandman, as you said, it seems like maybe an extra scene or two could have remedied the whole situation for me. Like, I made it completely fine, but it didn't. But Doc Ock was perfect. I think it was flawless what they did with him.
There is one minor potential continuity error though, and I say potential because they could just explain it away and say that if he hadn't died in Spider-Man 2, the tentacles would have reasserted themselves. But the chip broke in Spider-Man 2, so why did it fix itself when he came back over to the MCU universe?
It didn't.
It did. At the end of Spider-Man 2, the chip gets fried and he gets his own consciousness back.
Oh, I thought you meant like broken as in.
Oh, right, yeah, because it is technically broken for like the entirety of Spider-Man. Yeah, I see what you mean. But like, so why did it take control again? But as I said, they never explained it anyway, so we don't know. Maybe if he hadn't died in Spider-Man 2, the tentacles would have reasserted control and he only had a little bit of time. Maybe they even say that in the film. I haven't seen Spider-Man 2 in fucking forever, so maybe.
If I recall correctly, he did have to struggle against them, even though, like, I think it might have just been partially broken. And
yeah, he does say, "Listen to me
to
now, I'm in control," or something, doesn't he? Yeah.
So maybe they did just, they just took over again.
Also, I really love the fact that the trailer and the poster very much make it look like Doc Ock's going to be the main villain of the film, and a lot of the all of the villains get a moment to shine, but he's not the main villain in Green Goblin. Like that's a satisfying little. It's not that it was unpredictable, but it's satisfying to like not have it all laid out in the trailer. So
yeah,
he's all over it to get sales.
Yeah, that's true. To be fair, but yeah. So after a little bit of a fight with Doctor Strange, and that was cool as well. Again, like a thing that I think the MCU has not always succeeded in is showing Peter Parker just being like a really clever person. Is like when he's just like, mirror dimensions, just geometry. I know what I can do, and just like outsmarts Doctor Strange. He outsmarts fucking Doctor Strange. And you're like, cool, that's Spider-Man. That's what Spider-Man does, and he doesn't have the tech. He outsmarts his opponent. So that was really cool. And then the film kind of, he starts to be a scientist, and he's using Stark tech and whatever, but he's being a scientist and solving problems and stuff, which is again really, really cool. Also, just really quick side note, I love the fact that in the trailer and then from like a leak of a Spider-Man toy, people were like, oh, he's getting some new like magical suit that's like black and gold, and ooh, Doctor Strange builds him the suit, and he does give him a bit of a suit, but it's just his normal suit inside out. I just really like that for some reason, with like little wires hanging off of it and everything. But yeah, so obviously like they start to like fix the other villains, and then Green Goblin takes control, and that's when this film kind of blew me away. And obviously like Daredevil had already blown me away, and the villains coming back and being good had already blown me away, but that moment on when Green Goblin turns is just so fucking good. That whole fight sequence is like, so there's an interesting little tidbit, and I haven't like super analyzed Spider-Man in the MCU to know if this is still true, but I remember Tom Holland saying after Homecoming that they intentionally made Spider-Man not punch anyone in the film, because Spider-Man is super fucking strong, and he frankly doesn't know his own strength, so he does things like throw people or like grab someone's arm and make them punch themselves, sort of thing, or web them, because he doesn't want to like hurt them too much. But when Green Goblin starts threatening Aunt May, he just goes fucking ham on Green Goblin. And obviously he does that later on in the movie as well. And I was like, oh, he's not holding back anymore, and that's fucking cool. Like, yeah. He like fucking suplexes Green Goblin at one point. It's just,
I mean, it was very cool to see, and I especially did like, the end when he just starts absolutely taking him to Pound Town. But
I don't remember him doing that to Goblin.
Were you watching a different Spider-Man film on a different website? Like...
Yeah, one of those YouTube Spider-Man videos.
Was Elsa there as well?
It's funny you mention that, because I want to talk about something like that later. Not about the Elsa type videos,
okay.
but other Spider-Man type videos.
The butt slap one?
I was just gonna say insert the butt slap meme, but if it was in the comics, I'm pretty sure if Spider-Man didn't pull his punches on Green Goblin, he probably would have insta-killed him.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But Sam Raimi I don't remember whether normal Green Goblin has like ridiculous super strength, but Sam Raimi Green Goblin is like basically got the Hulk serum, more or less. He's like super fucking strong. Like you see him like tear through metal and stuff with his bare hands. So like, or like hold onto an entire like cable car with one hand. So
I guess.
Yeah, I just kind of went whatever. Also,
I think he just took a few too many punches for
his face to still be intact. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm fine with him living, but his face should have been pretty mangled up at that point. But yeah, no. So they killed off Aunt May. Was not expecting that.
Weirdly realistic death as well.
Yeah, it really took me by surprise, actually.
Sorry, what did you say, Tommy?
I said it was a weirdly realistic death.
Oh, realistic. I was like, didn't. Okay.
Yeah. What did you think I said?
I don't know what I thought you said, but it didn't sound like realistic, and I was just like, it was like relisting or something, and I was like, what the fuck do you mean? Like Aunt May had already died in another Spider-Man thing. You're like, oh, they're just rehashing it, sort of thing. But
okay, yeah,
yeah.
But yeah, that was a dark death. It was brilliant.
There was a little bit of a chuckle in the theater though when she did the with great power comes great responsibility line.
Yeah, I mean, the moment I clock, she's gonna drop over dead in a minute. She's gonna say the line before she does.
Yeah,
it just stunk of it.
But no,
it was really cool.
It was really well delivered. It was fucking tragic. Spider-Man gets fucking shot by a cop as well. Like he has to abandon her.
Over his dead aunt.
Yeah, it's just it's brutal.
Do you know what the most heartbreaking thing about the whole thing was for me?
Right.
It was the fact that the last time Peter saw Happy before the graveyard at the end was Happy screaming his name as he was getting arrested, watching basically, his ward standing over his ex-lover's corpse. I just thought, fucking hell.
Yeah, and also fucking obviously Happy Hogan's a great character and a great friend. Fucking shout out to Happy Hogan just saying run. God, I'm tearing up a little bit now thinking about the fact that Happy's now lost Peter, who is oh my god, no. Peter was like Tony to Happy, and he doesn't. That's really fucking sad now. That's made me really sad. I hadn't realized that element of it.
I mean, if you think that's sad, I mean, Peter's fucking lost everything.
Well, sure, but the film very much makes you aware of that. But I hadn't thought of and obviously you think about MJ and Ned losing Peter, but I hadn't thought about the fact that Happy, from what we know, Happy doesn't have a lot going on in his life anymore. With May being gone, Tony being gone, and now he doesn't remember Peter, who reminded him of his best friend so much,
and also his ex-lover.
And yeah, I mentioned him, May, but yeah, just, God, like.
And at this point in the film, they still haven't brought back the Punisher.
I know. What the fuck?
Honestly, if they brought back the Punisher, it would have been a much like Peter teaming up with the Punisher and being like, "I approve of your methods. Now let's go fucking kill
Yeah.
Green Goblin."
Imagine.
Wait, I think like Alex and I were going to go in the same direction here. What were you going to say?
I was gonna say, imagine if at the end of the film, like Peter's just beating the shit out of Green Goblin, and then like, I mean, I guess we're gonna go on to talk about it anyway. But other Peter like stops him,
And then
and, like,
one batch, two batch,
Yeah.
penny and dime.
or you lit like it's just focusing on like Peter just like starting to cry as he like throws it down, and you just see, and you just look. Hammer just pans around, and Punisher's just standing there with Green Goblin's like head just fully exploded.
Yeah, I was thinking, what would it be like if it wasn't a SWAT guy who shoots Pete over his dead aunt, but it's the Punisher.
It was a masked.
You killed Mysterio.
It was a masked SWAT guy. It could have been Punisher in disguise.
Yeah, it could have been. Yeah, it's.
Gonna have to go frame by frame, see if he's got a skull on his chest. Random side note, by the way, the pumpkin bombs are way underpowered in this film, right? Like, they turned people into fucking skeletons the last time we saw them. And I mean, I suppose they didn't turn Peter into a skeleton in the final fight in the original Spider-Man film, but still, like,
and also when
Harry.
He chucked one back at Harry, obviously.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, really, it's only that one time that they turned someone into fucking skeletons.
That guy must have been so weak. Like,
well, it's like 3 or 4 of them, but maybe they all had like brittle bone disease. Something I don't fucking know.
Well, no, they wouldn't have, because that was the only part.
The only surviving part. Yeah.
Brittle flesh disease.
They all had leprosy. They were going to fall apart anyway.
They're already half melted.
They were actually all just not real people. They were all just like flesh bots. Skinwalkers, is that the like Native American monster, like Skinwalkers?
Skinwalkers, yeah.
Anyways, but yeah, I mean, like, I think it's no secret Tom Holland is a phenomenal actor when he gets the chance to do phenomenal acting. I mean, we've talked on the podcast about whether we're not sure that he's going to suit Nathan Drake. That's nothing against him as an actor. That's just purely whether that's the right fit for that character. But like in Homecoming, he did an amazing emotional scene with the "Come on, Spider-Man" bit. Obviously in Infinity War with his "I don't want to go" bit, that's fucking amazing. And then in Endgame when he's talking to Tony at the end, fucking amazing. But this film, I feel like they just pulled out all of the stops and let him just act his fucking ass off after May died. I mean, her death scene is fucking tragic, but then all of the stuff afterwards, I did think it's a really cool shot and like sequence, but like I did think, really, like J. Jonah Jameson is allowed to play on like he's already played on big billboards, but this is like a massive billboard that takes up the entire cinema screen with Peter like just like dwarfed by J. Jonah Jameson. It's like, are there billboards that big in New York playing fucking Alec Jones in real life? Like,
well, yeah, he had a fucking podcast at the beginning of it. He was in a little studio on his own with a green screen.
But you do
him.
see he gets upgraded. So, but yeah, like it's for the emotional weight of it, like feeling like it's encompassing him anyway. So like even if it's not that, and it might be, I don't fucking know. I've never been to New York, but yeah.
Yeah, but J. Jonah Jameson was on the billboard at the end of Far From Home.
Yeah, but that was a much smaller billboard. Like this is like a fucking like it looked like it took up like 8 stories or something level of billboard in that sequence. But
I mean more like, but he literally had like a podcast. He was like a one man sort of.
Yeah, but he had the breaking news thing in Far From Home, didn't he? He had the scoop, but
right, okay.
But and then the film did something which, again, logically speaking, and we're talking about like taking big swings and jumping the shark. Logically speaking, this should not work. You've got the most emotional moment in the film to this point, heart-wrenching scene. Peter's completely broken. Let's do a quick intermission with different Peter Parkers being goofy with Ned's mum. It shouldn't work, right? Like that should break the pacing and make you go, "Why'd you do that?" So it's fucking amazing. That whole scene is amazing. Particularly when Andrew comes in, because he's amazing.
I would like to say I didn't think Andrew's entrance was that amazing.
Oof.
What?
This is the part where I want to talk about that Spider-Man video I was on about earlier. You know, there are like those like animated kids channels that are just terrible and they make the same stuff and they just like use these 3D models. And like you see these videos of like Spider-Man like jankily just like running and fighting and everything. Andrew running through the portal exactly like that. I thought that was fucking hilarious. I thought that is not a real person whatsoever.
I can't say a notice, but also Andrew Garfield is a lanky dude, so it could just be that he's got lots of limb.
I did think it
There
looked a
is
bit
no
strange,
way.
but I don't
He,
think
he
it
was like just
yeah.
running like, and I was what the fuck?
I
I
do.
thought it was a very Andrew Garfield run, to be honest.
I do think one thing that is, I don't think it's necessarily not a thing that Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man would do, because he does unmask himself in front of a kid in the first Amazing Spider-Man film. But he sees a portal in the street in New York and he's like, I'm just gonna hop through this portal. Oh shit, there's two teenagers here. Oh, they're talking about Spider-Man, but I'm Peter
Yeah.
Parker. It's like
Yeah.
they might
I
not know
wanted
who
the same
I guess everyone knows who Spider-Man is right now, but they don't know you as like they don't know and you just instantly reveal yourself sort of thing, like with no hesitation. Like at least Tobey Maguire's one's like, yeah, I'm Spider-Man sort of thing. But like
Just
Andrew Garfield's one's like, yeah, I'm fucking Spider-Man, bitch. I mean, maybe that's what Andrew Garfield was. He just like ran on set, was like, I'm gonna fuck it up. I'm me. I'm back, baby.
But what's even funnier is that then he has the fucking audacity to say, "Oh, it's not something I usually, advertise." What?
But the thing is, and I know Amazing Spider-Man 1's an okay film. Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a bad film with some good elements, but I don't think I ever disliked Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. I disliked
no,
the
it's fantastic.
the level of coolness they gave Peter Parker, but that's not Andrew Garfield's fault. This film just really cements that he is a fantastic actor for Peter Parker. I'm not saying I want to get rid of Tom Holland, but Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, they both fucking nailed their performances. And there's so many. I mean, you said it yesterday, Tommy. Do you remember what you said after the film
I said a lot of things. You're gonna have to be a bit more specific.
about Amazing Spider-Man 2 in retrospect?
Oh, that it's actually made me somewhat like Amazing Spider-Man 2 a bit more now. It's made it a better film for me. But
Yeah.
it has. Now it's got that bit of conclusion and character development from that.
Yeah.
It's a bit better.
I am interested though, like, because they said, like, obviously Andrew's Peter goes something like, "Oh, like after Gwen died, I became like really bitter and everything, and I stopped pulling my punches." Like, I'm really interested in that because,
I am as well.
like, they made that sound as if like he's just kind of like turned into a murderer.
I
But
don't
they
think it's
don't
that.
portray that at all.
I don't think it's that he's a murderer. I think it's that he's no longer a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I reckon it's both a little bit of a wink and a nod to the fact that Amazing Spider-Man 1, when he first starts, people compared it to Batman, with him like going around hunting for Ben's killer and like, bullying people. But also, I wonder whether part of it is literally just the fact that I don't know, but I would say that it's probably a safe guess that Andrew Garfield was probably pretty bitter when his films got cancelled. Like, Tobey Maguire's films got cancelled early as well, but at least, as whether you have issues with Spider-Man 3 or not, it's a pretty okay end to a story. Like, it's not a great film, but it does conclude most of the story threads. Amazing Spider-Man 2 absolutely does not do that. And also, he fucking loved playing that character. It was his dream job, and it got ended very early. And, maybe there's an element of him being like, yeah, I was bitter after Gwen died, or I stopped getting to play Spider-Man and someone else got to take over. So, yeah.
I stopped being able to bang Emma Stone.
Well, no, he got to bang Emma Stone for a couple of years later, and then they broke up. They were together for quite a few years.
Okay.
You would still be bitter about that, though.
Yeah, I would be.
But yeah, But yeah, the whole scene it's both really really funny, but it's also just like it's so heartwarming because they both feel exactly like their characters. Like I swear, like Tobey Maguire almost did the "I had to beat an old lady with a stick" pose as he walked through. It like, felt like
I
exactly
was
like that
literally
scene.
gonna say, Alex laughed at Andrew Garfield gangling through the portal, but
Toby's just
I
like,
just love the fact that Toby steps in like he's fucking Mr. Rogers. Even the clothes,
yeah,
it's everything about it. I loved it.
yeah.
Fun fact: still don't like Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker.
Get the fuck out of here.
Still thought he was shit. Didn't like it.
They even did my back.
They
My
did.
back.
They did so many fucking memes. Like again, like so we're full in spoiler talk now, so I can kind of unhinge on what I wanted to hint at earlier. Like people when they first theorized that the other Spider-Men would be in this film, they were like, "Oh, what if they talk about the fact that for some fucking reason Toby's Peter like has like it coming out of his body?" They fucking do that. They talk about that. It's a whole like conversation. Like that come, and then later on they do it again. Like how does that like? Just like does it come out of anywhere else? Like it's fucking hilarious, but it's also like exactly what fans want from that sort of interaction. Is like it's kind of weird that one of them for some reason has it come out of his body. They would like if they were real people, they would talk about that because that's weird, and they do, and it feels great. So yeah, just
I think that scene was probably like one of my favorite parts of the movie, just because it was like I wanted more of it because that's the type of shit I wanted to see if, you know, they were going to meet up. Like, you don't just want to have Spider-Man doing the exact same thing and not even discussing like the differences or anything, you know? So, like, I wanted more of that.
at the
But at the
same
same time, I was like, okay, I'm content with that, you know? It's like, I don't want the whole movie to be around that. You still got to move on. But like the stuff that they talked about, I was like, yeah, I'm cool with that. It was enjoyable, you know?
No, I think you're exactly right. It's like they gave us enough, and the pacing works really well in the film. The film keeps going; it doesn't just completely crawl to a stop to indulge in that too much. But at the same time, it's like, oh, it's so good, I want more of it, sort of thing. But if we had more of it, it'd probably ruin it. But even little things like the like Ned's mum is just great in that scene as well. Like she just really adds to the scene. Like, can you clean up your webs? Sort of like, but super chill though about it, isn't she? Like she's just discovered that her son's a wizard and also 2 extra Spider-Men have walked through.
I mean, I think it was kind of she did freak out in the beginning.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
then like after she like saw some other stuff, obviously she's just like, I'm going to bed.
I mean, I guess to a certain extent, if you live in the MCU, you're probably kind of done with this shit. By the time like half the universe gets snapped out of existence, then snapped back again, you're just like, just sort it out, man. Just like fucking if there's 3 Spider-Men in my living or 2 Spider-Men in my just fuck it, just make the bad stuff go away, and then you can go away. But
You'd be happy to be alive at that point.
But then the scene with, you know, so you go from this quite light-hearted, comedic, very fan servicey scene to a really emotional scene that uses these characters well, like to bring Tom Holland's Peter Parker out of his rut and basically serve the same purpose that Tony Stark has served in previous films, and I guess Uncle Ben has served in previous films. They kind of become that for Tom Holland, but at the same time, it doesn't kind of he's his own man in those scenes, really. Like they're talking to him, but it's not like they're treating him like a child. They're treating him with mutual respect, and I think that really adds something to the dynamic, is that he can kind of stand up for what he believes in as well, if you know what I mean. Like, it's not just other people telling him, like they are telling him their opinion on things, but they're not saying, well, you just got to do this sort of thing. It's actually him allowing to come to that conclusion himself. One minor gripe though is that so Toby finishes off Tom Holland's "with great power comes great responsibility," and then Tom Holland's like, "How do you know that?" And then Andrew Garfield chimes in, "That's the last thing he said to us before he died." No, he didn't. For you, he went, if you got the ability to do, then you've got a moral obligation to do that thing, and you because they didn't want to do the great power comes great responsibility thing again. So I was like, that's not true. You chickened out on that one.
Shut the fuck up, Andrew.
Yeah, and then they all get to Science Bro together, which is cool because we don't really see Toby's Spider-Man. Oh, he is a scientist in the sense like he can like talk with Doctor Octavius and Norman Osborn, but we never actually see him do science stuff directly in the Sam Raimi films.
He has a few like college courses that you see him in, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty much the brunt of it.
Like he's clearly
pretty
like
much all you see him do is just be like,
interested
"That's
in
a
it.
spider. Look, this is my knowledge of spiders. I'm clever
Mm.
because
Yeah,
I
like,
know about spiders."
I guess what it is like he has theoretical science knowledge as we see in the Raimi films, and like he can talk about. He's clearly very intelligent, but he never like applies it. Versus in this film, we actually see him in the lab with the boys, and they're all doing their own thing, which was really really cool. And I also like that. Then they go to the Statue of Liberty, and we get like the conversations about things like my back, and also the can you shoot it out of anywhere else sort of thing. We have these like jovial moments which we kind of get out of the way before the fight actually starts, and then they don't really undercut the fight sequence with much comedy after that point.
Yeah,
which is nice.
Also, I just want to quickly talk about a little Easter egg that I kind of put together after watching the latest episode of Hawkeye. Hopefully this won't be a spoiler, so don't worry about it, but a character in Hawkeye says that they'd like to see the new and improved Statue of Liberty. And obviously that's now ruined because of Spider-Man. So I thought that was like a nice little Easter egg between them, perhaps.
Yeah, but also is that actually continuity breaking? Now that I'm thinking, because the majority of No Way Home takes place just after Halloween, because MJ's told to take down the Halloween decorations. So honestly, that could mean that it takes place on Halloween onwards, because my first day working for Vodafone was on Halloween, and they told me to take down the Halloween decorations and put up the Christmas decorations, and I went, which day is Halloween? Like, surely I should be doing this tomorrow, but but it's presumably not right before Christmas, or otherwise the Halloween decorations have been up for nearly 2 months if that's the case. But Hawkeye set literally the week before Christmas, so presumably this either they're rebuilding the new and improved Statue of Liberty, or that's a continuity error, one of the two.
Maybe I've hit on something there.
Yeah, but yeah, well, who cares? Like, it's not that big of a deal, does it?
ruins both the show and the film for me. Never gonna watch them again.
I did lean over to Tommy when they were fighting on the Statue of Liberty and be like, what if the X-Men show up now in the like really dumb black leather costumes as well? It would have been cool, but it also would have been way too much, right?
Yeah.
Solid Snake's fighting Water Snake on top of it as well. All sorts of shit going down.
You
Magneto
mean Liquid
just
Snake, by
floats
the way?
up and he's like, "Oh, wrong film."
But yeah, so they start the fight, and what I liked as well is they don't instantly just all work well together. They actually have to like focus on it. They have issues, which is nice, because they kind of make the point that, and they do have a joke about it as well, but they make the point that they're all kind of solo characters. They work alone, and then Tom Holland one's like, well, I mean, I was part of a team, the Avengers. And they're like, cool, what's an Avenger?
Yeah.
Which is a nice moment as well.
Yeah. It was cool that they just had to say, we need to focus, and then suddenly they all worked super well together. Thought that was a nice touch.
Well, they said focus on your tingle. So they just like focus on their tingles.
Yeah, that sentence did not sit well with me.
Particularly because Toby didn't actually confirm whether he can shoot webs out of anywhere else, or did he just say? Did he say just the wrist, or did he dismiss it?
Just the wrist. Okay. Just the wrist.
I think he's lying.
And speaking of sentences that don't sit well with me, I need to out myself. I just called Liquid Snake Water Snake.
I did catch you on that,
what the fuck is wrong with
Alex was saying something at the same time, so I don't think it.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I just like want to let Tommy know that I caught him on his mistake. It's in the podcast.
Water Snake.
Water Snake is actually Water Devil's antagonist from Hunt Showdown.
Yeah.
That's a dumb joke because,
It's a very dumb joke.
and I
that
don't even
most
think it's
people
going to
won't
work
get.
because most people don't even know what Devils is because, okay, yeah. Anyways, so yeah, no, it was cool that they all had like a moment to shine as well. Like Tobey Maguire has his bit with Sandman when he fixes Sandman, where he's like, "It's all right, Flint," or whatever. I can't remember exactly what he says. But my favorite bit of the little moments in that fight sequence was when MJ gets thrown off of the Statue of Liberty and Andrew Garfield dives to save her, succeeds, and then just starts crying.
That was my favorite scene in the entire movie.
Just, yeah, just such a good moment.
And he acted it so well as well.
Again, Andrew Garfield's fucking phenomenal as that character. So, yeah. And then yeah, Peter goes fucking ham on Green Goblin, and his face should have been mush, but
Probably my favorite scene.
Yeah.
I really did enjoy that beatdown. I like it was very therapeutic for me to watch, I must say.
One thing I don't understand is why did Toby even need to get stabbed?
Yeah, I thought that was so funny. Like Toby's like, call an ambulance, but not for me.
Yeah. I guess it was just to like try and like wrench your heart because people might have believed that they were actually going to kill off Toby's Spider-Man because it's not really of any consequence. It just would break the hearts of people who grew up with him, right? But
Yeah.
I think that's
I
literally
would
the
have
only reason.
never watched a Tom Holland Spider-Man film again if he'd have got Tobey Maguire killed.
But I did say this to Tommy. He then says afterwards to Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man that he's been stabbed. It's all right, I've been stabbed before. And I was like, when have you been stabbed in the? Because presumably that happened in the Sam Raimi trilogy, but I can't think of when he got stabbed.
Pretty sure Doc Ock stabbed him.
He does have maybe a spike on one of his tentacles, but I can't think of when he gets stabbed by it.
I mean,
I feel like it's Doc Ock.
I mean, like, even if it wasn't one of the villains we've seen, I mean, he's been Spider-Man for like 30 years now by this point.
He almost certainly has been stabbed. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying that that line made me feel like it was a callback to a moment in the Raimi trilogy. I was like, I can't think of when though. But whatever. I'll just need to rewatch them when they're all on Netflix. So, and then I'll come in next podcast and be like, actually, Tobey Maguire's great as Spider-Man, redeeming.
He is great Spider-Man.
He is. No, I love him.
He was a good Spider-Man. I just didn't like him as Peter. I just think he's just so wishy-washy.
So yeah, and then the sacrifice that Tom Holland's Spider-Man has to do, it gave him consequences for his actions. He has to not only do the thing that like the whole film kind of started by him trying to avoid, but also like just yeah, that's a massive consequence for this character to have to deal with. He no longer has Stark tech. He no longer has anything. Yeah,
he literally has nothing.
He just has the Spider-Man suit that he had, which he presumably changes into the. I'm assuming he'll have like the mechanical eyes basically because he still has the suit that he was wearing. And obviously, there's a new suit at the very end of the film during the final swing. But I'm assuming that like it's still got some tech in it, but
like well, the web shooters and whatever. This is what. Well, I mean, obviously, he's made a new suit for himself now. I thought you'd like that.
I loved it, particularly because it looked like it might even be the same sewing machine model that Tobey Maguire used. It was like a super old school sewing machine. So,
but yeah. Something I thought of was, I mean, Peter Parker doesn't exist. Like, literally, he doesn't exist. So, how is he remedying that? Like, he can't just, like he he doesn't exist. Nobody remembers him.
He doesn't have a social
doesn't
security
have-
number anymore.
Yeah, I was
He
gonna
doesn't
say
have a
he's committed
passport.
so
He
many
doesn't have a
felonies
birth
right now.
certificate. Like, he probably doesn't have any of this shit because in everyone's mind, he doesn't exist. So how is he functioning?
He might have some of that. Like, he might have a birth certificate. I don't know whether the spell would have gotten rid of a birth certificate or whether he just had to go back to May's apartment, and be like, cool, that's still there. Or would he get to a birth certificate and it'd just be blank?
Well, I mean,
It'd just be
if you
signed,
take-
but there's no name on it, sort of thing.
I mean, if you take Doctor Strange's words at face value for exactly what he said,
Which is
He said,
presumably how it
"You-
works.
yeah, you don't exist.
This leads on to something else I'm wondering. The problem was that there are an infinite amount of people in the multiverse who know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. So the remedy was for them to forget who Peter Parker is. So, by that definition, the entire multiverse should have forgotten who Peter Parker is.
No, I don't think so, because the spell only applied to MCU Earth.
Yeah, but if the issue is that the multiverse is tearing
Yeah,
apart,
but the reason why they're
because-
all coming to this Earth is because of this spell specifically to do
that
with that Earth.
spell, yeah, but the remedy was still
That
for everybody to forget who Peter Parker is. So surely they're forgetting who their Peter Parker is as well. So
no, I think you're digging too deep into it.
it's not really that deep.
I can see what you're saying is that like the wording could be applied to that, but I don't think that's what the wording was saying. I don't think that's a plot hole or
Just
anything.
want more Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield movies, man. Give this to me.
Well, you're not going to get them.
I want them back. I don't want them to go.
But yeah. So also, I feel like Spider-Man kind of doesn't need a birth certificate or a passport. He can probably manage without those. Social security
Spider-Man
number.
doesn't.
Well,
Peter,
yeah.
though.
Well, even so, like if Peter's never going to leave America again, then he doesn't need one. And if he is, he can probably just like onto a plane, just
Yeah, but what is he? He needs a job.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The bit that is the problem is the social. My understanding is the social security number is like a national insurance number in the UK. He doesn't have that, so how the fuck is he renting and how is he going to get a job? But
And also, like, I'm curious because obviously it doesn't really explain a lot. It just says that like nobody remembers him. Basically, in their minds, he never existed. So, I mean, I guess, yeah, I guess in their minds he never existed. So maybe his birth certificate and stuff is
it's fine because
fine because like
yeah,
he did exist. Nobody remembers.
yeah.
And so like I'm wondering, obviously you already kind of see it, like it's hinted at the fact that MJ is kind of like, I'm getting a vibe off this guy.
It feels very much like that scene in the new Matrix trailer where Trinity like shakes Neo's hand and then she goes, "Have we met?" It's that
Yeah.
sort of vibe, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm thinking like everything has still happened. Everything up to this point so far in the MCU has still happened. So like obviously Spider-Man's done quite a lot. He's affected a lot of people already. He was, I mean, hell, the whole world fucking knew who he was. He said in the film he was the most famous person alive at the moment.
But still broke.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, do you reckon it will be a case of like he's just gonna like plead to MJ's memory and Ned and whoever else he really needs to remember him and just be like, I did this and that and this, I was part of this life and then all this happened and I made people forget, and they'll just be like, oh yeah.
I reckon that because of that kind of almost recollection that's there, MJ's going to be, because correct me if I'm wrong, my memory's a little bit hazy because it's been like 24 hours now since I saw the film. It didn't make the world forget about Spider-Man, just Peter Parker, right? So Spider-Man, people still aware of, he still helped the Avengers and stuff, just no one knows who he is. Is that right? Or have people also forgotten about Spider-Man?
I know who Spider-Man is.
I'm a bit unsure on that.
Well, you're going to go see it again soon, so you'll have to update us on the podcast. We'll have to have a little
Yeah.
spoiler section where you just...
I'm pretty sure everybody still knows who he is. It's just Peter Parker.
Yeah, I don't think the film confirms one way or the other, but I'm hoping that's the case, is that Spider-Man's still known. Even if they have forgotten about him, it's not that big of a deal. But either way...
I mean, they definitely know Spider-Man, because obviously at the very end of the film, JJJ is saying, "Oh, Spider-Man's still a menace," and blah blah blah. But like, I know I didn't even really think at that point.
Does the world know he helped the Avengers and that sort of level?
Yeah, like, do they know him as the Spider-Man before, or has he basically
shown up and destroyed the Statue of Liberty?
Yeah, has he done more Spider-Man things in the meantime, and he's already just made this impression again?
Particularly because if the spell only specifies that the world has forgotten about Peter Parker, but everything else Spider-Man stuff they still remember, then the world still thinks Spider-Man killed Mysterio. They just don't know who Spider-Man is.
Yeah, so
we're gonna have to rewatch this film just to work out the minutiae of that element of it. But either way, it doesn't matter for what I was gonna say. I reckon MJ's just going to gravitate towards Spider-Man in the next film, and then she's going to fall in love with Spider-Man. He's not going to tell her his identity, and then they're kind of going to do the Spider-Man 1 thing with it, right? Or maybe they'll take the opportunity to introduce Gwen Stacy or something like that, or anyone else he's dated in the comics, just because like the vibe I got from him not telling them at the end of the film wasn't just like him not knowing how to phrase it. It was like they're happy and they're safe and they're better off without me, sort of thing. So,
you see, Homecoming wasn't like a massive fan of MJ. I was just kind of like,
she kind of felt tacked on in it, to be fair.
Yeah. It was like they're taking her character in a different direction. Like, I'm not inherently opposed to it, but I also wasn't like fully on board, because obviously it's very different to like the MJ that we're so used to. And I was like, well, I like Zendaya. I think Zendaya's like pretty cool. Like, she wasn't even bad as MJ in the first movie. Like, she's a decent actress. Like, I have no issues with it. It's literally just just the representation of MJ that I didn't really like.
Particularly because Homecoming kind of just portrays her as this kind of like edgy outsider.
Yeah. It was just kind of like, well, you've just kind of made a completely different character, and I mean, even given her a different name, but with the same acronym as Mary Jane. It's like, well, it just seemed very strange to me.
Yeah,
I love Mary Jane, I think she was like really good in the Tobey Maguire ones. I've seen her in the games and everything. I think she's a really good character. MJ, Michelle Jones, I've completely turned around on her. I think she's actually really good. Like, in this film especially, I really hope they do bring her back for the other ones, because I'm like, she like the dynamic she has between like with Peter and Ned. I think it's perfect. That trio is so good. Like, I'd rather see more of this MJ rather than like normal Mary Jane. I think she's much more interesting.
No, I agree. I think MJ is a character that you can make interesting, but a lot, particularly the Sam Raimi MJ, I just don't find her engaging. I think something like the Spider-Man PS4 game did a really good job of making MJ interesting, although some people really hate her levels in that game. The characterization of her, I think, is really good in that game. But yeah, this MJ is really just a really good character and works really, really well in that dynamic.
Yeah, she's not just a damsel in distress.
Yeah, like, she's funny, she's intelligent, like, she actually cares about her friends. She wants to help, and Peter, lets her help, but she also understands, like, when Peter says to her, I need to know that you're going to be safe before I can do this. She understands that. She doesn't exactly,
like it,
but she understands it. And like, it's just such a well thought out character, and I'm like, I truly do hope they bring her back for more, because
I think they'd be crazy.
I just want to see that trio. Yeah, I really want to see it again.
Yeah, I could maybe see if they wanted to explore some of the other female love interests in Spider-Man, like maybe they want to bring in Black Cat or something like that. They maybe might not have her appear in the next film, or have her be a very small role in the next film. but ultimately MJ's Endgame, right? Like
I really like.
for every Spider-Man, MJ's Endgame. So
There's a very large part of me that really doesn't want to see Black Cat in a Tom Holland film, because Black Cat is very
seductress.
yeah,
And
very adult themed, I'd
do you
say. And
feel?
I
Do you
don't
still think of Tom Holland as a 16-year-old by any chance?
I not as a 16-year-old, but like Tom Holland's Peter Parker, just the like he is just very like kind of awkward, you know, like he
But
does have that young
that
sensibility.
could almost be funny though, if like
And
he's super
that's the
naive.
small part of me that is like, I kind of want to see it also, because I think that would be kind of hilarious, you know, just
like she's
this,
almost like rubbing up against him. And he's like, okay then,
yeah,
sort of.
yeah, like I think it would be funny, but at the same time, I'm like, that's also just kind of really cringy and like.
But if they
Don't see
pulled
it.
off this film, they could pull off that concept. Let's be honest.
Probably, yeah, probably. I guess we'll have to see. But
yeah,
hmm.
I think MJ and Ned are definitely coming back, but I don't think they're going to be as mopey as some characters get when they decide to abandon their friends and whatever. But I do think he's going to be kind of trying to keep a distance from them for the next film. Final little note I want to say before we go into, I guess, post-credit scenes and stuff. I love the final swing at the end of that film because it teases the new costume, which is like this very vibrant red and blue. But you don't really get a really good look at it because it's all at night and it's snowing and he's swinging through the city, which is just such a cool way to tease the costume for next time. It's like you got a glimpse of it, you get a vibe of it, but you haven't seen it in its full glory yet. I like that.
Yeah, I really like that too.
Also, what I said in the first podcast is that I wanted this film to have a graveyard sequence at the end.
Yep.
All of my wants came about. They had Toby and Andrew come back, they had Matt come back, and they did a graveyard sequence. All of my wishes. The only thing they didn't do is they didn't have Ben Parker's grave next to May. So I would have liked to see Ben Parker's grave, but whatever.
Or Frank Castles.
It did, but Happy.
What was that, Tommy?
I said it did, but Happy removed it.
Oh.
Oh, that's so bad.
There's actually a third post-credit scene where Tom Holland's Peter Parker visits her grave again, and he sees Happy in like a balaclava dismantling it. He's like, "What are you doing? This guy was a bastard. I was her one love." But yeah, should we talk post-credit scenes? Well, I guess post-credit scene really.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I still have a couple of things I just want to quickly go over.
Yeah.
So obviously with the whole, forgetting. Oh, actually, no. Just one thing I want to say is, I think it'd be hilarious, and I kind of want this, if the first person to find out in if they do another trilogy or whatever, if they have people find out, his closest again, that he's Spider-Man, I hope the first person to find out is Flash. Because I think I really listen, I don't like his character in this trilogy because I just think it's nothing like Flash. It kind of sucks. He's a nothing character. I want him to become Agent Venom at the end of the day. That's my biggest hope.
I like him as a character. I just wish he wasn't Flash Thompson sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. He's fine. He adds a bit of comedy to it, but he's not Flash Thompson. And I think now that they've made everyone forget, and they've already shown that he was trying to get in with Spider-Man, when he found out that it was Pete and everything, I think it'd be really funny if Peter's well, okay, I don't want MJ and Ned to know because I really care about them and I want them to be safe. But I also want someone to talk to, So he calls in Flash and he's like, "Look, got something to say." I think that would be pretty funny.
What if, along the same lines, what if the person he starts talking to vent all of his problems is JJ?
That would be funny.
Just starts calling up his radio show and just be like, "Hey man, I've just had a really rough day today and I just want to talk through it with someone."
um, but yeah, I think this is a great opportunity for them to do something else with Flash as well, especially because they did give him that little bit extra in this.
He
So
also
I
had the
kind of
blonde
hope,
hair finally.
yeah. So I kind of hope they really do take it in a different direction. And the final thing I want to talk about is it makes a lot more sense to me now how they're going to introduce Riri Williams, because now there is no Tony Jr.
Mm.
There was never Tony Jr. So, like, introducing a new character that could potentially take on Iron Man's legacy makes a lot of sense to me now.
Yeah. So, any more thoughts on the main bulk of the film?
Not really. Not from me.
Floating head?
No. I think I've covered everything I need to cover.
Post-credit scene then. I'm a little bit sad. I think it's a little bit sad that he came over and then he popped back again, but it does make sense continuity-wise.
Yeah.
Venom, we're talking about.
Yeah, Venom. It was funny because again, if you're watching this, Ben, shout out to you. I went to see it with Ben, and Ben turns to me after and he's like, I don't understand what just happened.
Did he miss
And I
the
was like,
symbiote?
well, I don't know. And I was like, it's Venom, and he's like, yeah, but like, what was the point of that? And I was like, he was like, I don't understand the whole, like, why did he go yellow and everything? And I was like, it was the spell. He got brought in via the spell, and then he went back at the same time as everyone else. And he was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And I was like, and he's like, so why was everyone like gasping and everything? And I was like, because he left Venom. Like,
Well, not
he's
all of
gone
Venom.
back with his Venom, but
Yeah.
there's like Venom in this universe now.
Mm.
And he was
Which
like,
is presumably
oh,
the same
yeah.
consciousness as well, right? Like it's
Yeah,
not just a
well,
bit of symbiote. It is Venom from the Venom films, but also Venom from the Venom films is back with Eddie Brock in the Venom verse.
Probably not.
No? Okay.
I'm not I won't say anything because I know you haven't seen it, but Tom will find out.
Okay.
In fact, he probably already knows.
May already know, yeah.
Yeah.
Do I need to watch Venom and Venom 2? I just don't really care about them as films.
They're good films.
They are.
They're,
They're good.
they're funny films, man.
I just don't feel and particularly because you've got to rent them. They're not just there on a platform for me to watch. It's just effort.
Venom might be.
It's just effort.
I feel like Venom might be on Netflix.
Maybe I'll watch Venom then, but Venom 2
Yeah.
is just effort. Anyways.
But yeah, anyway, that probably isn't the case with what happens in Venom 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Same
assuming
voice actor maybe, because I like whoever voices
Potentially.
Venom. And okay. But yeah, I what I personally hope though is that like it makes sense continuity wise why they disappeared is because it's the spell, but it would be cool if that bit of symbiote being in the MCU somehow helps Eddie jump back to the MCU, because I kind of would like to see Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock interact with Tom Holland. So
I just thought we could potentially get Agent Venom now, because Venom is in it, and also it's like, well, are we just gonna make him the same Venom? And if we do, why would we just put him on Spider-Man and have like kind of the same voice doing the same shit? Like, we could make another character a bit more interesting. I would very much like that. I would very much like that.
The one downside to this film not like resetting large parts of the history of Spider-Man is that Shocker's still dead. Obviously, someone else could become Shocker. Oh, someone else did become Shocker at the end of Homecoming anyways. So Shocker's still...
Yeah.
No, ignore me. If they do symbiote Spider-Man suit, I need a Tom Holland rendition of "Get back here, Shocker! Shocker!
I'll
gotta
chase
escape
you to
me!"
the ends of the earth.
Yeah, I need it.
Brilliant.
I've just thought about something. How did Venom and Tom Hardy turn up in the
Yeah, he doesn't know
MCU
that
when they
Peter's
don't know
Spider-Man.
Peter Parker Spider-Man?
Oh, he does because.
Are you
shit.
talking about the line from?
Shit.
He doesn't, because he then goes on to say he's never even heard of fucking Spider-Man.
No, he does, and I can't tell you why.
Oh, okay.
It will be a spoiler.
Should I deafen myself, or do you just not want to do this on the podcast and do this off the?
I mean, it's going to be a spoiler for Tom as well.
I
Okay,
haven't
cool.
finished it.
But
I feel
does.
like it's weird with the Sony universe. Like maybe you know the answer to this, Alex, but like in the Morbius trailer, they show the Sam Raimi suit, although weirdly it's the Sam Raimi suit from the PlayStation 4 Spider-Man game, is like graffitied on the wall, and that was even in the most recent trailer to Morbius. So it's like, is Morbius set within the Sam Raimi universe of Spider-Man films, but at the same time you've got Vulture showing up in the trailer for that, and so it's weird. And Venom is in the same universe as Morbius. It's just weird. But anyways, and then the other post-credit scene is not really post-credit scene. It's a teaser trailer for Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness, which I really liked, but at the same time it would have been cool to have an actual post-credit scene. And then
I really wanted Fantastic Four.
We'll get it. It's coming.
I know I didn't expect it, but I would have. Well, I kind of did expect it, honestly, because I thought like I didn't really know what else they would do, and I thought, seeing as there's been quite a lot of hype and everything, I thought maybe we might just. Like, I didn't expect to see the Fantastic Four, but I kind of like thought, oh, we might just get something that alludes to it, you know.
You know what? I'm gonna make a wild prediction right now, completely just based on numbers. Fantastic Four dropping 4th of April 2024. It just works, right? 4/4/24.
4/4/24.
Like
Okay.
the only annoying bit is the 20 bit, but like they said Fantastic Four is coming soon. 2024 is still 3 years away, just about, and 4th of April just lands, doesn't it?
I guess we'll see. We'll have to try and remember that you've made this prediction.
Well, just remind me about Skyrim's 11/11/11 day, and I'll probably remember my prediction. Cool.
Oh, yeah. Post credit, if we're talking about it, they are, I guess, linking What If into the main continuity.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
also,
was super hyped to
potentially
see Strange Supreme.
I think it's supposed to be the same version.
Yeah.
I did say to Tommy,
Yeah,
though, part of me wishes they had kept the Into the Spider-Verse logic of him keeping his animation style when he comes, so that just have the kind of like very cartoonish Doctor Strange come up and be like, I'm Doctor Strange, and live action Benedict Cumberbatch just be like,
Yeah.
But I really like the vibes they put out on that trailer. It looks cool. I like it, but I don't think there's it's not Spider-Man related. I'm not sure I want to do it deep dive into it, but it looks cool. I like what I saw.
Yeah. I'm still not that into it, honestly. Like, I'm gonna watch it, but I
think Doctor Strange, the original film, was fine. It's not great. It's not bad, but the concept of a horror film in the MCU done by Sam Raimi with that just is like, sounds awesome to me. So
you see, I have this horrible feeling that we would have just seen more multiverse stuff in Spider-Man than there is going to be in the multiverse of madness.
Maybe Garfield and Maguire will reprise their roles briefly in Multiverse of Madness.
That would make me a very happy man.
It's us, Peter Parker, and Doctor Strange is like, who?
but then Sorcerer Supreme Strange is like, oh, I know that guy.
Yeah.
Briefly, just I feel like we're kind of wrapping up. We've been going for nearly as long as we normally do the Higgy Piggy podcast, just on this movie. But I also just want to talk about the future of the MCU Spider-Man. So there's a bunch of conflicting reports. I did a little bit of research before this recording. Amy Pascal, who is the producer of these films, has said that she would like to do another trilogy with Tom Holland. Cool. Basically, all of the other executives at Sony are like, what Amy says goes. And obviously, it's going to rake in loads of money for Disney. So chances are Disney are also going to be absolutely game for doing another 3. However, Tom Holland has recently come out and said that he has been working non-stop for 6 years in acting and is kind of considering taking a break to focus on starting a family.
Starting a family?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And maybe look into teaching in primary school and stuff. So maybe we're not getting Tom Holland back anytime soon. Because he's not contractually up. From what I understand, there are not any contracts binding him to more films anymore currently. I don't reckon he would say no, but it might be that we don't see Spider-Man return for like another couple of years, sort of thing. Because we've had Homecoming, Far From Home, and No Way Home are like 2-year intervals, I think, from all of them. So it might be that we don't see Spider-Man for like another 3 or 4 years or something.
I don't believe him for a second.
Well, I can believe that he is kind of having a bit of a quarter-life crisis and being like, I want to try different things. But if he's saying that he wants to start a family, he is currently dating Zendaya, who is in this film, massive, and was also in Dune, massive. I don't really see her taking a break from her career anytime soon unless she really wants to start a family. So I feel like he might be like, I want to have kids, and she's like, fuck off, no.
I mean, Tom Holland has stated before that, like, you know, Spider-Man is, again, like Andrew, his dream character, and that he'd play him forever if he could. I find it highly unbelievable that he'd just turn around and be like, yeah, I want to teach in primary school and have a family at like bloody 25 or whatever he is.
He's 24. He did also say recently that if he's still playing Spider-Man when he's 30, he's done something wrong with his career. So I think
no, he's pulling our legs. Fuck that. I don't believe that.
He could be doing that, but it could literally just be that he has worked a lot like he's been in a shit ton of things in the last 6 years. It might just be that he's tired and wants to take a break. But then I hope that it would be one of those things where, because this happens with plenty of people who take sabbaticals and stuff, is you take a break and then you're like sitting at home, not really doing much and going, I'm bored. And then you just come back to work, sort of thing. So maybe it'll be like that, where he takes a year or 2 off of acting. But what I'm saying is that I would not be surprised if we don't see another Spider-Man film in like 2023 if we're keeping with the 2-year schedule. I could see it being, you know, phase 5 maybe, sort of thing. But
I'd feel exhausted as well if I made a film with Mark Wahlberg.
Oh god, maybe Haley Steinfeld's going to take a break of acting after Hawkeye because she had to act with Jeremy Renner.
Hey, watch it. You leave Renner alone.
But yeah, so I do think there's going to be another trilogy. I think that's pretty locked in. But it wouldn't surprise me if there's a break. In which case, we might see a more adult, both in terms of Tom Holland looking older, but also acting older, Spider-Man next time we see him. In which case, there might be Black Cat without it being weird. But
maybe.
One final thing I want to mention, I said this to Tommy when we were watching the credits. The credits have a big bit during them where they go, like, special thanks to Avi Arad for all he's done for the Spider-Man franchise and for us finally achieving his vision on film. Fuck you. Fuck Avi Arad. He is what ruined Spider-Man in Spider-Man 3. He's what ruined Spider-Man in Amazing Spider-Man 2. He's what ruined multiple Spider-Man cartoons because he wanted to sell action figures. Fuck Avi Arad. Spider-Man's better off without him. Which he is now.
Agreed.
The last several films. Like, I get that he was probably technically an executive producer in this film, and so they felt the need to give him credit in the credits, but fuck Avi Arad. Anything else that we want to talk about with Spider-Man?
No. I am content. Like I am with this movie.
I'm content.
Yeah, I'm gonna go and see it again on the weekend. So come the next podcast, you know, might have something else to say about it, but until then, I'm pretty confident I'm all out of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, it's my favorite MCU film. Didn't actually get to say that yet.
Yeah, I think it's probably my favorite MCU film. It's definitely my favorite live-action Spider-Man film. I don't know if it ekes out Spider-Verse, though, for me.
It's my favorite Spider-Man film. Still doesn't beat out Ragnarok for me.
I also said to Tommy, what film are we comparing it to? I can't remember what film we were comparing it to now. It's enjoyment wise, it's probably my favorite Spider-Man film, but I don't know whether on like a filmic level I prefer it more or not, if that makes sense. It's like
fuck. What's it we were comparing it
yeah,
to?
it was where we were like saying like one of them's like conventional art and the other one's
It's a
like...
better film than this one, but I enjoyed it. Yeah,
That's gonna bug me.
that's really gonna annoy me. Was
Anyways,
it? Yeah.
I don't think it was
Yeah.
Dune because that feels like the obvious one, but I don't think it was Dune that we were comparing it to.
Was it a Star Wars film? No.
It doesn't really matter, to be honest.
Yeah.
Either way, I was
Either
like,
way,
it's
the,
like it's really fun, but I would feel like I need to mull it over some more to decide like whether it's like filmically better than say Spider-Man 2 or whatever. But enjoyment wise, fucking... Oh, that was it. Was Logan that we were comparing it to?
Logan. That was
Yeah,
it.
and I was like,
yeah.
I don't know whether like on a like filmic level, like Logan is just a fucking masterpiece of art, and this is much more of a fun popcorn movie. And that's not me disparaging it. It's just it's a different type of film, and so I don't know whether I would hold it up on the same accolades of like filmmaking level, but enjoyment level, fucking loved it, sort of thing. Anyways, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I think for me, like, even though I really did like it, I think it's probably in my top 5. I reckon now, just about. I think it. I think with me though, as I said, I went in not liking the idea. Like, I didn't like the premise of the film, and even though I think it did it well, I still, as I said, would have preferred the
No.
vision that I expected. And
That's fair. I was like
And,
that
like-
with Endgame and time travel. So
yeah, and like the Led Zeppelin scene in Thor Ragnarok sends like shivers up my spine every time I watch it. I could watch it 10 times in a row, one after the other, and I'd still get the shivers. It will never be beaten, I don't think, for me.
But I will say, without a shadow of a doubt, this film did what Infinity War did, but just with Spider-Man characters, which is arguably, in a way, less impressive because there's less characters to deal with, but also characters who haven't played the role in years, but did it better than Infinity War, in my opinion. Which is partially because Infinity War is a part 1, essentially, but yeah.
Yeah.
I might want to go see it again as well. I'm meeting up
I'm
with a
gonna
friend
probably
early
do that.
next week. If she hasn't seen it, I might just be like, hey, rather than hanging out, do you want to go to the cinema instead? Alright. This was Roll for Insight. We just spewed our thoughts about Spider-Man No Way Home. If you have thoughts about Spider-Man No Way Home, please share them in the comments below, but no spoilers, because some people might be jackasses looking at the comment section of a video to do with Spider-Man No Way Home, even though they haven't seen it. No Pizza Time reference.
My
Yeah.
God, you're right.
Bad film. 0 out of 10.
That's for the sequel.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.